Okay, I think we've been streaming here for a minute or so, which is longer than we've been streaming any other time this evening. So, joining you here on Rutherford Weather, it's Brian Barrett and meteorologist Justin Bailey, who is joining in here tonight. Things are stable. I don't know how. We've been trying to get on here for about 20 minutes. Beats me. Technology, huh? So let's kind of talk about where we are now. Justin, we've got special weather statements really covering most of Rutherford County. A special weather statement is a step down from a severe thunderstorm warning. You may be hearing winds picking up. And in showing you where we're actually seeing the outflow boundary from Lascassas Elementary School, Richard Siegel Soccer Park, really kind of dissecting the northern and southern parts of Rutherford County here. And that's where the strongest winds are right now, I guess, right?
That's correct. We just got hit with them here in Lascassas. Solid 30, 40 mile per hour wind gusts here. And the special weather statement says up to 50 miles per hour, even sub-severe. But definitely enough to blow around some lawn chairs, some pool umbrellas if you had those set up on these warm days, and whatever trash cans, and might even make a small trampoline fly a little bit.
So this is well ahead of the storms, and right now we're seeing some heavy rain up toward Laverne. So, from Laverne all the way to really the Siegel area just north of downtown Murfreesboro, there's nothing but wind. So kind of explain this phenomenon, if you can. Why is this occurring, and why is the rain and storm? I don't even know if you can call it a storm. There's no lightning within this entire radar view here from really west of Franklin all the way past Watertown and Smithville. So kind of what's going on with these storms tonight?
So the storms to our north, if you zoom out a little bit, you'll be able to see that there's a severe thunderstorm warning to our northeast, and that stronger core of storms closer to the Kentucky state line and into Kentucky has laid down a rain-cooled air mass that is sagged southward out ahead of the storms to our north up in Nashville and Wilson County, Lebanon areas. And as this strong low-level jet that is inducing all this wind shear, it's kind of pushing those storms back over into that rain-cooled air mass that at the surface, that cold air is able to gush out ahead of it. Anything riding or south of that boundary would have, some potential for tornadoes, and as well as your higher end damaging straight line winds and hail threat. Once you get into that rain-cooled air mass, those when you get into a more stable atmosphere and greatly reduce your severe weather potential.
So, we've seen all kinds of severe weather with the storms tonight, especially up in Kentucky. And, I really think the Storm Prediction Center probably nailed the moderate risk area, at least the level 4 out of 5. Because that included, very far northern counties in Middle Tennessee and Southern Kentucky, and that's where we've seen the biggest storms in terms of tornado damage and things of that nature. And really the threat was going to be here in our area, damaging winds. We're seeing some winds; they're not severe criteria, hail, things of that nature. These are the small scale things that you really don't know how it's going to pan out until you're in the event. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. So I think there's a little bit of plus and maybe minus with this, but it's you're dealing with Mother Nature. So how do you figure that out?
And these outflow boundaries, like what's coming through our county right now, they can be very tricky. They can, if they're moving quicker, they can undercut a thunderstorm and cut off its fuel supply. But if they stall or are oriented with a storm's direction of movement, like, say that one right there is moving, it's oriented almost due west to east. If you got a storm, if it stalls and you got a storm also moving west to east along it, it could actually help enhance the severe weather threats along that boundary. But if it's moving quicker, then it can undercut that storm and choke it off from its fuel supply. So they can hurt, they can also help. It just really depends on how they're oriented and how the storm's direction of travel is relative to the boundary.
And I guess the lesson we can learn here is this is kind of helping, because the storms are moving from the northwest to the southeast in this general direction, but this boundary, gust front, whatever you want to call it, is moving mainly from west to east. So that's kind of this.
As long as it keeps moving, if it starts to stall or starts to, as those storms west of Franklin and back in Hickman County, as they come in, if they have stronger inflow, that could counter the cold outflow, and that stronger inflow could cause that to lift back north again.
So those are some of the things that we're kind of watching here. There was obviously a lot of interest in today. I think it was well advertised, I guess is maybe a word that we can use. That severe weather was going to be a possibility today, this evening. This is kind of the time frame that we were told to, that this is what the models are kind of showing and predicting. So, severe chances. I just see that the storm up here in the northern parts of Middle Tennessee, northeastern parts of Middle Tennessee just went severe. We've got some severe out to the west, out in western Tennessee, McKenzie. So any best guesses on what might happen here in Middle Tennessee, especially for us?
Well, it does kind of look like, at least back in West Tennessee, like this boundary has stalled or is slowly lifting back north. Storms are stronger and strengthening, and you do have that severe thunderstorm warning cell back further west out near Dyersburg area. It's not going to be over for a while, and we're going to have, if nothing else, a heavy rain threat as these storms are generally moving west to east. We got a lot of rain to get through before we're on the back end of this deal.
So that's a look at the Memphis radar, and I'll pull it back over here and continue the loop on the radar here in Middle Tennessee. So obviously what's going through, Nashville to the south, Bellevue, Franklin, that's obviously moving here in our direction. Let's see. Getting some new warning information here. You mentioned the F word just a second ago, flooding. Now a flood advisory in effect, and this is going to include Rutherford, Wilson, Davidson, Murray, Williamson, Dixon, Hickman, and Cheatham counties with this flood advisory. Yeah.
Could easily see a couple inches pretty quickly from these training thunderstorms.
It's going to be in effect until 4:15 a.m. Let me get the particulars on it. Heavy rain from thunderstorms, minor flooding ongoing. Expect in the locations I just gave you just a second ago. That's pretty much the message. Minor flooding in low-lying and poor drainage areas for this flood advisory. So what we're expecting here, let me stop this from going forward. We've got this storm, and then this storm, and then this storm. And when you talk about training, these are lined up like 1, 2, 3, and they're all moving in this direction. That's like think of a train and the train cars going right over the same area. That's kind of what you're talking about, right?
That's right.
So in terms of severe weather, What does this do when you have a system that begins to show training thunderstorms rather than, a big Boeing segment that brings winds, or a supercell that's, maybe has a tornado warned storm with it or whatnot? With this,
Well, each of those storms will be able to, if they don't get undercut by this boundary, we'll be able to tap into, a warm, unstable air mass to its south. And any one of them could generate some small hail, could generate, damaging straight line winds. And if they're rooted south of that boundary, could pose a tornado threat.
well,
They
this
could just could show some supercell characteristics from time to time as they're moving along this boundary.
Well, here is a different color to kind of show the boundary there. The boundary was near Siegel just a few moments ago, now kind of downtown Murfreesboro. If that continues to sag further to the south, and these storms continue to move from the west to the east, if the boundary gets further south than the storms, then your severe weather chances are lower, right?
And yeah, well, at least the tornado threat would be gone. It's still possible that above that boundary, there's still enough warm, unstable air that you have elevated non-surface based thunderstorms that could still produce, primarily a hail threat at that point, but
Okay.
could still generate some severe weather. Just greatly lose your tornado potential.
Might be a little hard to see here, but this is the latest reading at the Murfreesboro Airport, 79 with a dew point of 70. Here in Smyrna, 72, dew point of 61. So that
So it's not a real cold outflow boundary.
No. But it
I would have
does.
thought being rain cold, it would have been more like 66 or so.
Well, let me get a little closer into Nashville here and see what happened there, because it went through quite a bit earlier there. 67 at the Nashville airport with a dew point of 61. So,
yeah, that's more than I was expecting.
Yeah, maybe, the sensor at the Smyrna airport hasn't caught up just yet, or, they usually take those readings at the top of the hour. So that may have been 12 o'clock and it's 12:16 right now. Let's see. Here's another reading up in north of Nashville. I'm even having a hard time of reading it. 71. No, that's 61 with a dew point of 70. So,
Okay.
Trying to bring you a different radar perspective, and I hope this doesn't crash things. We were not sure what we had a little trouble getting on the air a few minutes ago. I can tell when the wind and the thunder get close by, because the dogs start rumbling around. So here's the gust front, Murfreesboro. It's sagging just a little further south. So that's the key thing to keep an eye on, right?
Continue to progressively move south through the county. That's correct.
The reason
I would say, as long as you're north of that boundary, you're looking at maybe some hail and flood potential.
Part of the reason that I like this particular radar setup is it shows much better on stream when you're viewing it, because you can see, the landmarks are much the text of the landmarks are much bigger, if you will. So it's showing this outflow boundary right now, downtown Murfreesboro, kind of paralleling Old Fort Parkway. So that's where you're going to see some gusty winds. And then here's our storm activity pushing into Laverne to Smyrna, Jefferson Pike, Walnut Ridge, Rock Springs, Living Springs. There's the TriStar Stonecrest Medical Center. So that's with the Sam Ridley Parkway exit there on I-24. We'll put the radar into motion here for you. I did want to give you a look at the Siegel Skycam, and this is looking off toward Smyrna. And of course, you can see a lot of bugs flying around, and the wind's in that large tree, not blowing around too terribly. Downtown Murfreesboro, lots of trees to kind of take a look at. Not a whole lot to see right there at this point. See what the Rutherford County Courthouse shows us. And just looks like storms. You can see a little lightning in the background, but, not a whole lot of wind right there. So
really not a whole lot of lightning going on.
Honestly, you're right. I was just kind of thinking about that.
But, we don't currently have a storm on top of us. We're just dealing with an outflow boundary. So it doesn't make sense. There's not a lot of lightning.
So Smyrna, Laverne, there's a radar image update there. Laverne, you're very much in the heavy rainfall right now.
I'm looking for any hail. I'm not seeing any major hail signatures. I mean, just a speck or two here and there. Might be some P's coming in, but sub-severe looks like if there is any hail.
Yeah, there's, a speck here, like you just mentioned, west of Laverne, and this is across the Davidson County line. So you're looking for the different colors there.
I don't see any crazy high winds developing like with a bow echo starting to form and surge out.
So here is kind of a look at the velocities, which is a look at the winds. And you can kind of see along this area.
You can see the boundary very clearly.
Very clearly, right there. So 20, 30, maybe mile per hour winds. And this is, of course, looking from the radar that's in Old Hickory down into our area. But that's where the greens are. You see, some brighter colors, maybe out toward Eagleville and Rockvale. And let's see, there's a 47, 45. There was a 50 in there. So, those are the winds with the boundary, and this is behind the boundary. So that's a look at the wind product and how does that reflect with where the rain is falling. That flashing box you see right there is a new special weather statement that's going to cover the rest of the county on into Shelbyville and Columbia for the next 37 minutes. We'll pull up the particulars on that. Wind gust of 40 miles per hour. And this is, this says strong thunderstorms will impact these areas, but this is really, honestly, outside of thunderstorms. I mean, look how far the thunderstorms are away from Christiana. And here's this darker green where we're seeing the boundary. Look right there between Triune and Amilville. That is along that gust front, and we're seeing kind of some precipitation pop up. So that's kind of what you were saying a moment ago. We got to watch for some of those things to, does something pop up along that boundary and then tap into that warm air?
Right.
So right now, some really heavy rains coming into Laverne and Smyrna. Just got a quick update right there. So if you live anywhere near Hales Camp, Smyrna Golf Course, the Roadway Inn and Suites, the Smyrna Airport, the Aldi in Smyrna on North Lowry Street, the Walmart Supercenter. That's where the heaviest of the rain is located. Hunters Point, there's Stonecrest right here along I-24. And that will continue to make its way here into Rutherford County. I guess we probably should reiterate that, there's no immediate threat of anything severe at this point. I did just notice, anytime you see a blip, Justin, you kind of watch that and see what happens with that. That's, of course, south of that boundary.
Right.
If it happens to be moving a little bit to the north and east, that's kind of why we're here and looking at that. To the north and east of Chapel Hill is Christiana. And unfortunately, this has been an all too favorable area for storms to track, from Chapel Hill up toward Christiana, then into Reedyville and Woodbury. You were...
I've become quite familiar with that little corridor down that way.
I was just going to say, I just saw some lightning outside your window there too, by the way.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. When I took a look up, but yeah, this has definitely been an area. May 8th of last year, for instance, this was the area, maybe a little bit further to the, north and west, but storm went from Columbia through Eagleville and Rockvale and then Christiana and on into Reedyville that caused some problems and dropped an EF0 tornado in Christiana. But, this is I wonder your perspective on this. Is this uncharacteristic? No, it's not uncharacteristic for May, but a lot of times in May, especially this late in the month, we're seeing more of the plains get in on this. But we haven't had like hugely high temperatures in the 90s for a streak here. And that's usually when we're under a heat dome, and to the west is where all the storms are happening. I just heard some people talking about, this is not necessarily normal during this time of the year, but every spring is different. And this spring, we've been a little more active. So I don't know that this is very abnormal or not. I really wouldn't think that it is.
No, if anything, I would say we're just actually coming out of a fairly abnormal pattern with that large cutoff low sitting on top of us and being cool and rainy for day upon day upon day upon day, it seemed like. Finally broke out of that, and as soon as we broke out of that, we're right back into severe weather. So I'd say this is returning to what has been more than norm.
I will,
especially for this time of year,
kind of give you a look at a few days in the future. This is kind of day 3. We've got a risk of severe weather. Day 4. And day 5, there's a just to the west on day 5.
Yeah.
So we have storm chances here for the next. Well, the National Weather Service mentioned during the briefing today that maybe tomorrow, maybe a few storms, not really looking at severe weather. Sunday, a pretty nice day, but then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, more storm chances in our forecast. So pretty active pattern here to end the month of May. We're just kind of on here, and for those who are joining, there's no immediate threat here. We're just kind of watching where this outflow boundary is and the storms that are coming into Laverne and Smyrna. But within this entire view here, Justin, there are 2 lightning strikes. 1 right here and 1 right here.
these things have really, and you saw one of them right behind me apparently, but these have really lost a lot of their energy. That outflow boundary surging out ahead of it's just really kind of zapped them. And they haven't been able to reattach to it or catch back up with it.
There are a few here back toward Franklin, just west of Franklin. But again, to draw your attention to, and you can probably see it if you're watching along, that's kind of the outflow boundary. It continues along down through here, right? Sagging a little further
Right.
to the south.
And you could even see it's surging out from the Franklin and Spring Hill convection. So it continues, and that's even moving southeastward to coming into Columbia. So pretty safe to say the county's going to be cleared by this rain cold air mass in pretty short order.
Yeah, I drew that line, and then it moved a little further south. And the storms that come through here, we'll see north or south of that boundary or tapping into that. So it might be worthwhile. I'm not sure. I know we've done a lot of explaining and talking about nothing but a severe or a special weather statement that goes on for another 29 minutes here. But after it took us a minute or two to get on, I thought it would be worthwhile to try to talk about that. And I'm sure, that's kind of the thing. There's a balance here, and I'm not sure what that is, but this storm system was well forecast many days out. And when you start out talking about a chance of severe storms to being outlooked 4 or 5 days in advance, and this is something fairly new from the Storm Prediction Center, I'm kind of, is it good, is it bad? I don't know. If someone tells you that this is what's going to happen in 6 days from now, don't believe it. Because we've seen this thing change in the last 24 hours tremendously. So
absolutely.
With that being said, the levels are there for a reason. And again, we talked about a second ago, I think they really kind of nailed it. The moderate risk, or level 4 out of 5, is where we saw some really tremendous damage come from storms in Kentucky. As it moved into our area, there was the potential there. Thankfully, it was lower. But I'm hearing the winds pick up outside a little bit here.
Rain's coming in now.
Yeah.
That's what you're hearing.
See a little lightning off in the distance. But I guess my point with all of that is, it is a forecast, and this is what we think could happen. But the atmosphere, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, will do whatever is available, I definitely think we had the potential for today. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. The instability was there, the shear was there, the forcing mechanism, clearly, stuff went. It's just, it didn't go here. I mean, Kentucky's just across the state line of Kentucky, places have been devastated. I've seen 3-4 inch hailstones. It's, Somerset, Kentucky, London, Kentucky, apparently got hit pretty hard by what appeared to be a pretty large tornado, and saw multiple tornadoes in Missouri. St. Louis got hit hard. It was definitely warranted, just because it didn't get as bad here as they thought it might have. The potential was there, and it lived up to it in other places for sure.
Well, from this Siegel cam, you can definitely see the rain coming down pretty hard. Wind kind of picking up. As you take a look at the radar here, this is where things stand at this point. And that boundary is kind of sticking close to downtown. From Woodbury to Reedyville to Murfreesboro, kind of along the John Bragg Highway, and then east just south of 840.
It appears to have slowed just a little bit, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least for the time being.
So here's Riverbend, Indian Springs, North Point Hall, Stones River Country Club, Stones River National Cemetery. And there's the battlefield where Thompson Lane and Northwest Broad kind of intersect there. So that's where the heaviest of the storm activity is picking up. Just to take a look at the wind product. Not seeing a whole lot that really stands out. 20, 30, 40 mile per hour winds possible. Where you see the difference in the colors, that's kind of south of that boundary, but still pretty windy there.
Even whenever I look at the product called Echo Top, where it shows how high up in the atmosphere the storms are. This storm over Thompson Station, Franklin area, just a few scans ago was pushing 47,000 feet high. And now I'm only seeing, 38,000 feet. So these storms are starting to collapse a little bit. They're not as tall, not as energized. The atmosphere is cooling. Okay, and as soon as I say that, it bumps back up to 43,000. But it's not 48.
Right.
And that's just one storm. All the other cells along the line have trended downward. So something to monitor, something I'm tracking, but that's just one of the cells that are still above 40,000 feet. Those supercells up in Kentucky when they were producing tornadoes on Somerset and London, Kentucky were 57,000, 60,000 feet high.
So if we go from where I circled, where the higher echo tops were just a moment ago in Franklin, and then turn the reflectivity on, that's the strongest part of that storm. But again, all of this is sub-severe.
Yeah.
Which is the good news. I had someone ask me about that. It was one of those back in the day comments. I'm sure you've heard those before. And I heard that, if you're 50 plus like myself, you're not supposed to say back in the day to a younger person. But back in the day, these were considered like, routine thunderstorms. And what is different today from 30 years ago? Well, the difference is technology. I mean, I'm coming to you from my home and showing you a radar product, and we're talking about these things. And 30 years ago, it was only your television stations and the National Weather Service, and they didn't have the tools that we have today on a PC, So I think that's part of the difference, right?
Absolutely. Then, part of it's just overall awareness as well.
Yeah.
And education of the general public, and the ability to, through social media, to see, if all you're experiencing is what's immediately happening directly around you and your immediate neighbors, that's a lot less than being able to get on social media and type in Kentucky storms, and now I can see anybody's picture of every hailstone that's fallen in Kentucky. And it makes it feel like it's a lot larger of an event than it otherwise would feel.
Well, here is your radar in motion. The storm's back toward Franklin, maybe a little more electric. But as we send the the radar in motion, look at this green line that starts out between Smyrna and Murfreesboro and then sags further south. As long as it continues that particular motion, Justin, that's going to sag further south before these storms can come in from the west and really hold down our severe weather chances in terms of, seeing hail, high winds, things of that nature.
Yeah, the little blip we were tracking down south of that boundary, now coming into Christiana, has continued to get a little stronger. Obviously, it's a little bitty tiny thing, but it'll be interesting to watch. Is it pretty imminently going to cross over that boundary? They're heading kind of opposite directions, and should see that fall apart in pretty short order as it does so.
Yeah, blips can become more than blips, but this is what we're talking about. And see, we'll follow it from Columbia to Chapel Hill, just west of Christiana now.
So that's in an air mass that's still probably 79, maybe near 80 degrees. And it's going to come across that outflow boundary and pretty quickly come into 66, 67 degree air mass. And it's going to lose a lot of its oomph, if that's a proper term.
I guess at this point we can deem it a term, right? Why not? And this is similar to what happened early April. I remember you all.
We talked a lot about boundaries during that April setup.
Sure did. And you and your brother Bryan were out tracking storms in, Murray County and coming into Williamson County and seeing rotation that was really low. And then all of a sudden, we go from a tornado warning one county over to a special weather statement here in Rutherford County. And, those are, you hear the term small scale features, and those are kind of some of those small scale features that your models probably aren't going to pick up on because those just kind of happen,
Yeah.
So, Versailles link out toward Versailles Road.
You got a blip watch?
Yeah, that's a blip watch. We'll call it a blip watch. South of Rockvale, that's a pretty good little downpour that's coming in. And if you are anywhere north and west of Murfreesboro, you're in some pretty good rains. Smyrna, Laverne, we've been talking about you and rain here for quite a while, down toward the Wade community, Roland Estates, Florence, Creekside, Rock Springs. And
I can attest to it pouring in Las Casas. It is coming down in the buckets.
So there's Las Casas, Colonial Acres. There's State Route 266, State Route 96. And there's St. John's and Canesville over in Wilson County, Valley View. Just south of that is Browns Mill, Sharpsville, Halls Hill, and Porterfield. You're going to get in on it pretty quick. Let's take a look at a couple of our cameras here. This is the Siegel cam. It's been raining for quite a while. A wind whipping up, but kind of a general thunderstorm. As we go up to downtown Murfreesboro, not a whole lot. Maybe the trees beginning to sway a little bit, but the roads are wet. There is some light rain, but not a terrible amount going on there just yet. But it is on the doorstep. Here is downtown Murfreesboro. There's the alley on Main, Discovery Center. Out toward the City Hall. So we're seeing some rain there, but it's just up Northwest Broad Street around the battlefield, just south of that on Broad Street, where the rain and storm activity picks up. I keep saying storm, and there is some lightning in Laverne and Smyrna right now. And over toward Noreen, that's going to be north of the Las Casas area.
That may be a little hill up there around Canesville. Something, yeah, a little bit of purple. Might be some small hail falling there.
Let's see if we can see any here.
Well,
Maybe.
maybe a little small hail coming down.
And so, kind of the reason Justin was able to see that. So we'll circle the area here where you see those pinks. This is a different product than you're normally seeing. You know, reflectivity is where it's raining and things of that nature. Well, let's go back to that. And within that area, it's a little east of that now. But you see where those purples are showing up between Canesville and Greenvale.
Yeah, that's a newer radar scan. It was right where you circled.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes the products are a little bit behind. This is the hydrometer classification versus reflectivity. Sometimes it's a bit behind, but if you
it takes the computers a little bit longer to process that data and generate a new image.
Yeah, and as soon as I circled or went up between Greenville and Statesville, but yeah, you're right. Sometimes the data is a bit behind, but all that does is just kind of give us an idea of what could be happening. So maybe some small hail there. It's nothing really, really big. We're seeing now that storm that was down between Rockvale and Versailles toward Link and the Crescent community. So this is going to affect the southern part of the county. South of Barfield, be over in Tagum and Pleasant View, or Pleasant View and Floration here in the near term. And this is kind of a collision course. So this is the whole line of storms moving in this direction. And so now we'll put things into motion and we'll see that this blip is moving in an entirely different direction. And it's about to collide in moments or right now with that outflow boundary.
Might be some small hail there. Excuse me, coming into the Triune area along Highway 96, approaching Nolensville Pike.
Yeah, that's between Epsworth and Arrington.
Yeah.
I would like to reiterate that we're talking a lot about nothing. Well, I can't say nothing. We're talking a lot about a little, if that makes sense. We are seeing some lightning here east of Franklin, between Franklin and Smyrna. A few more lightning strikes between Smyrna and further east as you go, almost to 840. But in terms of if we had a worry meter, our worry meter would be like at a 1, right?
Yeah. And we got 12, 13 minutes left on this special weather statement and really just trying to find anything that might warrant an extension of even a special weather statement at this point.
I would like to kind of continue to point out we are under a flood advisory, and that's going to go until 4:15. And kind of what we're seeing is this line of storms in this direction. And things are not necessarily moving to the north or to the south. You can see everything is kind of riding along that line. And the outflow,
the outflow boundary is slowly dragging us southward, but it's slow.
Yeah. And that's kind of the point. So this is kind of what we call training. These storms are going to continue to move in from Franklin, and there's a storm west of Franklin, and then between Dixon and Franklin, and these are going to continue to move on into our area, and that's why we have the flood advisory. And you can see here, Justin, just to point out, in areas to the south of that boundary where things really want to go.
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on those down there just in case something did want to spin.
But those are storms that are to the south and moving off to the east, south, and east of Rutherford County here. So Tullahoma, Winchester. We can see the special weather statement for Sparta and Crossville kind of pops up with those storms. That's kind of what we were looking at down here with this blip. Is this blip here in, south of Murfreesboro going to be able to grow into something? Let's kind of stop this and see what our blip is up to. Well, it's between Barfield.
Have you named your blip yet?
No, not just yet. But if you take it back a few scans, you can see how it grows into some intensity there. But it's now met up with that outflow boundary. It's right there.
Yeah, next scan or two, it's gonna look entirely different.
I mean, even if it continued along, I mean, it's moving in this direction. If it continued on, it's eventually gonna run into storms that are moving in this direction. Sometimes those interactions, depending on when they happen and what's going on in the atmosphere, can be kind of tricky, but this one,
yeah,
we'll see. Let's see, what time is it? Almost 1 a.m. We've got, 9 minutes?
9 minutes left on this special weather statement.
9 minutes. We're just kind of on here talking about what's going on here. It's really...
We might be the only two on here talking. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. That's okay.
Well, some people sleep really good in a rain pattern against the window and on their roof.
It's weird. I have a little, it's one of those Apple device. It's not an Alexa, but it's the Apple device of that. Alexa and I didn't get along, but I have it in my bedroom and I play those thunderstorm sounds to go to sleep every night. That's kind of weird, isn't it?
As a kid, I had a CD that would play just thunderstorm sounds, and yeah, I'd fall asleep to it. Usually before the storm got there, I was out.
So the National Weather Service a few minutes ago continues the tornado watch for Rutherford County. That's about as far north because it was canceled for Davidson, Humphreys, Cheatham. So we can see that kind of trimmed back here on the radar. I would expect that is going to be a trend that continues as well.
Mm-hmm.
So our blip is now north of between Murfreesboro and Christiana. It's getting a little harder to see, but this looks like where our outflow boundary is, and it's definitely north of that.
Yeah.
And those are just a few of the small things that you kind of look at. It's going to be pulled into the line of storms that are moving southeast, and all of a sudden that's going to start moving to the southeast instead of to the northeast.
It'll probably just get absorbed into that larger line of storms, and it may provide a short pulse up in intensity for interacting and colliding with those storms. A collision forces stuff to go up, and it could just cause a short pulse and an increase in intensity right there.
Between Triune and Amelville, we could be seeing around Spantown Road and the Tennessee National Guard Parkway, which is 840. Maybe some small hail out there.
Yeah.
I have no idea if you could hear the dogs going bananas, but they just did. We had a lightning strike fairly close by. So this is looking off toward the north and east. As we look in downtown Murfreesboro, still not a whole lot going on in terms of wind or anything like that, or heavy rain, but it is getting close.
Echo tops are down to 41,000 feet on the tallest cell right there around Almaville. So that would correlate with where if there was going to be any hail, it'd come from the tallest storm, and it would be right there coming up 840, Almaville, heading towards Blackman area.
So that's what Justin is talking about. The brighter oranges are the higher storms. And so that would correlate with where we're seeing those maybe deeper reds and purples. But we're kind of splitting hairs here. This is not we're not talking about anything hugely severe. This the cloud formation downtown looking off, this is looking off to the northeast. Kind of an interesting look to those clouds. Nothing bad, but just kind of huge puffy clouds there. Not a whole lot of rain, but it is definitely on the way. And then this is where the wind and rain is really coming down.
Wow.
And just to kind of give you an idea, I'll flip over to the radar product here. In the Whitehaven area and Reynolds, that's kind of where our camera is looking here. So that's where some of the higher returns are coming in. So here's information from the National Weather Service. Things are trending down. This is meteorologist Caleb Cravens. As of now, storms are subsevere. That said, strong wind gusts up to 45 miles an hour and small hail still possible with the strongest parts of the line. Minor flooding ongoing along I-40 and west of 65. Not expecting major flooding concerns. We'll continue to remove counties from the tornado watch as the main line moves out. I would expect that next batch of counties to be pulled out of the tornado watch would be Rutherford.
Okay.
Davidson, Williamson, Williamson and Rutherford would be the next kind of group as this moves to the south and east, down 24.
All righty.
2 minutes.
Heaviest rainfall totals I'm seeing so far looks like just southeast of Nolensville. There's about almost 1.4 inches, and up near Walter Hill got about 1.25 inches. Pretty consistently through Laverne along I-24, about an inch. Just something else to talk about.
Yeah.
For a couple minutes.
Just trying to see what the storm total precip's showing here, but not really seeing much of that on my radar here.
Well, yeah, that's the product. Definitely,
Definitely here at the weather house. So this is the camera that's outside of my place here. And that's, again, looking off to the north and east. So rain, pretty consistent lightning, really falling here. But again, these are not severe. We're not looking at severe thunderstorms right now at this point. But a light show, you betcha. This is looking from downtown Murfreesboro to the northeast. That's a much different picture from the Siegel area.
That's looking up near where y'all are about to get a new office location, if I'm correct.
Yeah, yeah. This is on top of the building and then right across the street. We saw a little lightning flash right there. We're working on some additional cameras, and if you know what a PTZ camera is, you know, pan, tilt, zoom, you know, to be able to move it around. Those are some things that we're hoping to get here in the near future. But you can see the rain picking up downtown there a little bit, and that brings us to the radar currently, and that's downtown Murfreesboro, MTSU. So that's the heaviest of the rain precipitation beginning to come through. But guess what? There's no special weather statement. There's no nothing. Although I can't say nothing because you can.
Sounds like bedtime.
Yeah. This is. I have to outline it because you can barely see it back there in the background, but that's our flood advisory. And so this is the area just north of Murfreesboro, includes Smyrna and Laverne. That's the area that we have that flood advisory until 4:15. So from Florence to Smyrna, Laverne, Rocky Fork, the Cherry Estates, Miller Estates, that's where we're expecting the storms to continue to move on through. And just to kind of take you back into West Tennessee, here's that line.